Tranquility Base here. The Eagle has landed. That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world. And yet, I ask you, is not an alien force already among us?
We must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex. The potential for the disastrous rise of misplaced power exists and will persist.
In my association with Project Loop, they definitely withheld information.
The whole fleet of them, look on the ASA. They're all going against the wind. The wind's 120 knots.
You solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you are about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
Do you believe that our government is in possession of UAPs?
Absolutely.
All right, everybody, welcome back to Total Disclosure across all platforms, where we explore the mysteries of the unknown, from sightings to conspiracy theories. We dive deep into the unexplained occurrences in our skies and on the ground. If you're passionate about exploring the unknown and you're intrigued by the possibility of extraterrestrial life, then you're in the right place. Let's get this intro just over with, right? I've never been more excited for a show in my life. One of the top people I've always wanted to talk to. Today I get the chance. And yeah, a little bit of nervous jitters, but that's okay. Today we're talking to Robert Salas. Robert has an absolutely stellar career and is a graduate of the U.S. Air Force Academy. He served 7 years on active duty, worked as a weapons controller, flew target drones, commanded intercontinental ballistic missiles, otherwise known as Minutemen. And in his time, he experienced one of the most notorious UFO incidents at any nuclear Air Force base. With that being said, let's welcome the man, the myth, the legend, Robert Salas. Robert, thank you again for being here today, and I am so excited. I haven't been nervous for a show in a while. I'm a little nervous.
A little nerves are fine.
Yeah.
Hey, Tyler, it's great to be with you. I love your excitement about this subject. And of course, I'm eager to answer any questions you may have about my incident and other related topics that may come up. Happy to be here.
Yeah. Well, I think one of the first things that we should get out of the way is, who is Robert Salas? Now, why Robert Salas, before joining the military, what made you choose that career path? What motivated you, and why?
Well, to be honest, I was looking for ways to get into college, and my parents didn't have the resources to send me to college, so I applied to my congressman to be considered for an appointment to one of the military academies, and of course the Air Force Academy was my first choice. My uncles were in World War II, fought in World War II. One was in the Pacific, the other in Europe, and so there was a motivation there to enter the service and get my college degree at the same time.
So when going through that process, you know, did you ever see yourself becoming the person with the hand on the key for the nuclear arsenal?
No, honestly, that was not my one of my goals. So that just happened due to circumstances and assignments that were offered at the time. So, no, that was not an objective.
So, how I would assume, now this is just me assuming, you would have to be of not only the top caliber, but among the top caliber of the top caliber, as far as mentality, constraint, mental awareness, situational awareness. What were the prerequisites for a role that you would eventually accept as a launch commander?
Well, I know we were evaluated before selected for this kind of duty, but I don't know the details. I was not made aware of how they made that evaluation. So I really can't answer that question in detail. I simply don't know what criteria they used to select us for this sort of duty.
So that's kind of not, I don't know if it's troubling. I don't know. I don't think it would be troubling. But is it safe to say, though, that you would need to be now? I mean, you would need to have scored a certain proficient, you know, a certain score, have a certain background, and, you know, be of sound mind to be in a position where, you're essentially safeguarding the world at that point. I mean, the U.S. is arguably, you know, the biggest superpower, and, you know, we dictate essentially what is, you know, the global atmosphere. So to be in that position, I would assume that there would be more of a selection process. So you're saying.
As I said, I think there was a process to evaluate those of us that went into this kind of work and had this kind of responsibility, but I simply don't know those details. Certainly, I would think we'd have to be reliable and committed to our jobs, and but you know, I'm struggling here because I simply don't know the criteria.
That's okay. It's okay. Well, you know what? Let's just you know, it doesn't really even matter to the context. But all right. So you go through, right? You get the job. Can you describe your role and your responsibilities at MALMSTROM Air Force Base and subsequently on the night of March 14th, 1967?
Okay, I'll correct you on that date. It was March 24th, 1967.
That must have been a typo on my part. My bad.
But so we were broken up into two-man crews, and we were sent out to what is called launch control facilities, where we had the ability to monitor and, of course, launch missiles if given the order correctly. And that was our duty, to maintain, make sure the missiles were ready to launch, and then to launch given the proper orders. We would go out to what's called a launch control facility, but then there was something called a launch control center, which was 60 feet underground. We would go down in an elevator, and we would be locked we would relieve the crew on duty, and then we're locked in for 24 hours until we were relieved the next day.
Oof.
And this was, we had a little cot down there, so we took breaks from time to time, take a rest break. On the evening of March 24th, 1967, I was in charge of the facility because my commander, whose name is Fred Mywald, he was later Colonel Mywald, and he is now deceased. But on that evening, he was taking a rest break, and I was on duty in charge of the facility. So first thing that happened was I get a call from my topside security guard. We had about 6 guards upstairs, and they were used to, of course, monitor our particular facility, but they would also go out to the launch facilities where the missiles were actually located. The missiles were located approximately a mile or two away in a kind of a circle around this central point called the Launch Control Center.
Right.
So the main guard calls sometime in the evening hours. I can't tell you the exact time. I don't recall, other than that it was dark outside. Of course, we had no window into outside. We were 60 feet underground. We had no cameras up there. At any rate, he reports that he's seeing strange lights in the sky flying very fast, stopping on a dime, reversing course, making 90-degree turns, things you've heard from other witnesses, but that's what he told me specifically. And he said he wanted to emphasize, these are not airplanes, sir. I've never seen any airplane do what these lights are doing. And there was no engine noise, but it was, these things were flying over our facility. And he just wanted to report it. I didn't quite know what to think. I may have mentioned, you mean like UFOs? Because I think I did make that comment because we had reports in the local Great Falls Tribune newspaper. Great Falls is where MALMSTROM Air Force Base is located. About people reporting objects in the sky. So I was just joking, really. And his response was, well, all I can say is they're not aircraft. And I said, well, okay, well, thank you for your report. And we terminated the call at that point. I didn't know what else to do with it. I certainly wasn't going to report lights in the sky back to the base. So,
well, so what was your initial reaction when the flight security controller, reported those unusual lights in the sky? Did you think this was, in your head, you had to have questioned, could this be adversarial?
Yeah, I thought it was a strange call. Their job was to secure the facility and maintain security. And so I think he was trying to alert me to something that could happen because of these lights nearby. And but we didn't have enough information at that point. Now he calls back within minutes, maybe 5-10 minutes later, and starts screaming into the phone. I couldn't make sense of what he was saying, but he was obviously frightened. When I finally got him to calm down, he said that he's got all the guards pointing their weapons at this object. It's a glowing reddish orange pulsating light that is hovering just above the front gate. And scared to death, obviously frightened, and he wanted me to tell him what to do next. Of course, I was dumbfounded. I didn't know what to think. I knew he was serious. This was a serious report. And by the way, they had no ability to control things up topside. So I told him something like, make sure the facility is secure. And then he jumped in and said one of the guards was injured. He had to go, and he hung up the phone. So I went to wake Mike. First thing I did, actually, to be honest, was to look over at the status board that we had on the status of the missiles. We could tell if they were operational by lights that showed their status. And they were all green at that time. I went over to wake up my commander, who was taking that rest break, and started to tell him about those phone calls. Then all of a sudden we get some bells and whistles going off in the capsule, and we both look at the board, and sure enough, one of the missiles just went what we called no-go condition. The light went from green, which is operational, to red, which is a no-go condition. In other words, it could not be launched. And then very shortly after that, the rest of the missiles went down. And all this while this object was still up there. We went ahead, and there were also a couple of the launch facilities where there was a potential incursion in the facility. In other words, we had indicator lights that told us if something or someone or something was trying to get into one of the launch facilities where the missiles were. We had two of those facilities that indicated that. So we went through our checklist. My commander called the command post back at Great Falls or MALMSTROM Air Force Base. And I called upstairs to see what was going on up there and to report these incursion lights or indicators of potential incursion into two of the facilities, and ordered them to go out to those facilities. I asked about the object to the flight security controller, and he said it had just flown off. So as I said, the object was above us at the time the missiles were disabled.
Okay. So I have a question. Now, after the second frantic phone call, I put a pin in two things that you said. One of the guards was injured. Now, this is maybe inconsequential, but did you ever figure out what the injury was, and was it related to what was happening?
The next day, after we were relieved, I went up and talked to the guard, the flight security controller. He's the main guard, and asked him about the man who had been injured. All right, either the next morning or on that call I just told you about. And he said that the injury was had something to do with his rifle, or he tried to climb the fence. I'm not sure about that. And he wasn't sure but he did cut his hand. It was not from the object itself that the injury occurred. He cut his hand, and they thought the gash was big enough that he needed stitches, etc. So they had to send him back to the base, and they did do that.
But so, could it be safe to say that he was trying to get better vantage point of this object. Who knows what he was really doing? I guess we'd have to ask him about that. But the second thing, now when
by the way, Tyler, I got confirmation by letter from a man who was part of the security squadron, and he had heard at the barracks, they all stayed at the same barracks.
Yep.
That this did happen. The man was injured, but he heard both possibilities. He didn't talk to the man himself. He just heard scuttlebutt back at the base that it was a cut on his hand, and it could have been from some mishandling of his rifle, or we had barbed wire around the perimeter of the facility, so he might have cut his hand on that barbed wire. Now, other than that, I cannot provide any details. I have never been able to contact any of these individuals. They did call me the next day. I don't know how they got my home phone, but one of them called me, and they were begging me to come talk to them, and I really wanted to talk to them. But I had to say no, I could not, because I had already signed a non-disclosure agreement at that time, never to talk about the incident again to them or anyone else.
And that's something that you did for 27 years. But I want to go back. We'll get to that. When you say the nuclear weapons or the ICBMs, Minutemen, went into a no-go, what does that exactly mean? And I know that these weapons, they are not connected to each other, so it's almost like a safeguard, so that if one does go down, that the rest are not affected. So I guess their confusion lies in, were these weapons rendered operationally unlaunchable, or did they just go into like a standby?
No, they were not in standby. I forgot to mention that one of the first things we did was check. We had something called Versa. It was a voice activated system that would give us information on the status of the missile, and we were able to check each missile separately. But this Versa was all reading a guidance and control system failure. So all of them had been, and to answer your question, no-go simply means that they were unlaunchable. They were not operational. They could not be used.
So if the president were to call, right, and
right,
Russia, was messing around, you're saying that those weapons would not have been able to be utilized by our command.
That's correct.
Okay. And in your experience, is there anything or any other situation prior to this day, the 24th, I'm sorry, I must have typoed that, that this had ever happened before?
Not to my knowledge at that point. However, as I mentioned, my commander called the wing command post to report our incident, and he was told that the same thing happened at another flight of missiles. Now, my commander told me this after he was finished with his call, and I thought at the time he meant that evening, but in fact, he was telling me about an incident that occurred 8 days earlier, and that's called the Echo Flight incident. I was at Oscar Flight. Now, so we had the launch control facilities. We simply used letters of the alphabet to identify them. And they were basically cookie cutters of each other. You could hardly tell the difference between one or the other than they were in different locations. But and I just want to make that point because later on I'll mention why I was a little confused as to exactly where I was when I started researching this in earnest.
Right, right. So, okay. So now we've established that, because I have that somewhere here that OSI or
Air Force Officer Special Investigation, right?
Had put out I don't know if it was after this incident. I don't have the date in front of me, but they had put out essentially a memo saying that they were having incursions, and it was specifically at our nuclear installations. So I'm just wondering if it was before or after.
I'm not sure what document you're talking about. I've never seen any document by AFOSI stating that they had incursions at nuclear facilities. If you've got such a document, I'd love to see it. I've never seen it.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to look into that one because that was told to me by multiple people, including Richard Doty of OSI. But again, he is Rick Doty, and people see it both ways. But to go back to the incident, I can't imagine that there was a procedure in place for such an event, but what is there a procedure for a breach of a nuclear missile base?
Okay, good question. I'll tell you what I think because of the circumstances. The next morning after we were relieved by another crew, we were ordered to go to our squadron commander's office. There we met our squadron commander. I asked him if this was some sort of Air Force exercise. He said absolutely not. He was white as a sheet. He didn't know what had happened. But right away they had prepared there was a man from AFOSI, Air Force Office of Special Investigations, in the office, and they shoved the non-disclosure statement in our faces and said, sign here. Go ahead.
I gotta ask you, do you think that they do this? I mean, you said it was the next day.
Yes.
Do you think that there is a coordinated now I know we're kind of like skipping ahead, but do you think there is a coordinated effort by our government to not let these kind of incidents get out into the public? Because if you essentially admit that something can fly and turn off and on nuclear weapons, you're essentially admitting that you're defenseless. You're prone. And the last thing a government wants to admit is that they can't protect their people, especially when it comes to this. So do you think that there's a coordinated effort to shut you guys up?
Absolutely. No question.
Okay, so these OSI agents that showed up, do you recall any of their names? Do you recall any of their... No?
Well, I asked for a copy of this NDA, and they wouldn't give me one. So I didn't even retain a copy. But I would think if our government is serious about getting to the bottom of this particular incident, they could go to the Air Force Office of Special Investigations and ask for a copy of that NDA that I signed and other people have signed. Now, getting back to your question as to whether or not there was some procedure already established, I think there was, because the Echo flight incident occurred on March 16th. And before that, the incident at Minot Air Force Base in September of 1966, which David Schindele has testified to, was a similar incident. Again, UFOs overhead, all 10 missiles were shut down. So by March 24th of 67, I know of at least 2 incidents that resulted in the same thing. The Air Force, and that's why they were prepared to deal with my incident so quickly.
And that would be like you said, so between Minot and MALMSTROM, I mean, they did not want this to get out. So the NDA that they hit you with, how long is that? Is that a lifetime?
You bet.
So
lifetime
NDA.
Yes.
Okay. And why? So why did you? Why after 27 years did you break that oath?
Okay. All right, let's go forward in time to 1994, about April of 1994. I was in a bookstore in Seattle and happened to see a title that looked interesting. The title of the book was Above Top Secret by Timothy Good. I picked the book up, opened it to page 301. Believe it or not, this is the truth. I just happened to open to the only page in this 500-page book that talked about missiles being shut down at MALMSTROM Air Force Base in 1966 and in 1967. I was flabbergasted, but I was also excited because I thought, wow, this is maybe the Air Force has declassified my incident because this sounded an awful lot like what I recalled I had experienced. Now, again, this was some 27 years later, but of course, that the memory of the incident itself had not faded, even though, well, I'll take that back. It faded, but I still remembered the fact that my missile shut down during a UFO encounter. So, yes, go ahead.
So, okay, I'm going to let you finish that statement because I'm going to bring. I do want to go back to the night that the missiles were disabled.
Okay, so like I said, I was very excited, and because it was in this book that was published, I jumped to the conclusion. Literally jumped to the conclusion that the Air Force had declassified these incidents. So I went home, and the first thing I did was to tell my wife about my experience. Up to that point, I had not mentioned a word to her about it, of course, because I was following the requirement of my NDA. she happened to have a friend with her who was aware that there was a MUFON organization, Mutual UFO Network, in Seattle, and suggested I contact them. I did, and I asked for an investigator to help me submit a Freedom of Information Act request, FOIA request for more information about these incidents, my incident actually, which I thought was anyway, I contacted a man by the name of James Klotz, and he agreed to help me submit FOIA request. And actually, he and a friend of his wrote up the request. I said, don't mention anything about UFOs. We don't want to spook the Air Force about that. So just mention the incidents that occurred in 67. The actual article, paragraph in the book said 66 and 67. So I specified 67. The Air Force wrote back and said, this is classified. However, because of the time that's elapsed, we're going to declassify this incident. So they declassified what I referred to as the Echo Flight incident and started sending us documents. So when we received those documents, I was so excited because I thought they had declassified the incident that I experienced. It turns out I was wrong about that. I was not at Echo Flight. And it wasn't until 2 years later that I realized I was at Oscar Flight. When I finally contacted my commander, who was with me at the time, Fred Mywald.
Interesting. So, okay.
So at that point, I went public. I gave an interview to the Great Falls Tribune. They actually wrote up a front page article on it. I have a copy of that, and it was published on my birthday.
How coincidental.
In 1996.
Yeah, that was 3 years after I was born, sir.
Wow.
Yeah. Just to put it into perspective for you, how long that you've been fighting this. So, all right. So I'm gonna bring you back because I did skip a couple things that I wanted to ask. So, can you detail the sequence of events that led to the alarms indicating that all 10 or up to 10 or 12, I believe it's been said, Minuteman nuclear ICBMs were disabled? So what does that look like when that starts to happen?
Like I said, when we heard the first horn go off, I was about to tell Mywald, my commander, that we had these phone calls. But before I could even talk about those phone calls, we get a blast. It sounds like a horn you'd hear at a basketball game, at halftime.
Yeah, right.
So we immediately recognized there was something wrong with one of our missiles. We looked over at the board, and we could see that one of the launch facilities had gone from a green status to a red status, or a no-go. And then the other missiles followed suit very quickly. One at a time, they went from green to red, and we wound up with all 10 missiles disabled. There were never 12. There were always 10.
So it's 10. It's okay.
Yeah.
All right, because I've heard both numbers, and I've always wanted to know which one was the real which one is the real number. So 10. Thank you for that. So I mean, that's gonna be that. I mean, that in itself, seeing something like that, being a part of something like that, when the most powerful, the most destructive technology and weaponry starts to just, one by one, click, 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 go into, unlaunchable mode. I mean, your heart's going to be beating at a million miles per second. So what's going through your head at that moment?
We were both pretty amazed. None of us had ever seen anything like that before or after. I was there for 3 years, so was Mywald, and of course we went on duty at the missile sites about every 3 days, and we'd never seen more than one missile go down for any reason. And by the way, this was not a power loss. We never lost power to the missile sites or to ourselves. And one of the reports that I received states from the Air Force investigation that was ongoing that was an external signal that caused the shutdown of Echo Flight. I'm going to say our incident was very, very similar to the Echo Flight incident. And the investigations that were done stated that there was no power loss at any time.
So, God, I mean, I can't even put myself in that position. After an event like this takes place, is it, and I know someone brought it up in the thread from the other day, and I wanted to bring it up because we talked about it on the phone. So there was a question about the official account. So this is from you said you wanted to address it, and from Osiris or Jeremy McGowan.
Yes.
So he is in the chat. So I figure if we wanted to do this, we could do it now.
That's fine.
Okay. So essentially what he is saying is I want to find the correct. So what I wrote is the official count of the alleged UFO incident. Yeah, go ahead, Robert. Go ahead.
Well, I think one of the questions he had was how long were the missiles down? And at one point he wrote that they were down for some 40 seconds and then they came back up. That's not true. And the reason is because a guidance and control system failure requires maintenance people to go out there and reset the entire guidance system, which means they have to make sure that the targeting is correct, where the missiles are being targeted for, and that the missile orientation is correct. And so it's a involved procedure, which takes people to go out there and manually go through the process. There's no automatic reset of the missiles. We can't just push a button and reset everything like you do on your laptop. So I hope that clarifies that point.
And so these were not. So what you're saying is these were down for much longer. Now, how long were these down?
Well, of course, we were relieved the next morning. When we were relieved, all our missiles were still down. We did have, as I recall, maintenance people on the sites at that time, but the process was ongoing, and it probably took a day or so to get all the missiles back up on alert status.
So they had to take this whole system apart, piece by piece, is what you're saying?
No. There was no taking anything apart. And by the way, there was no damage to any of the missile equipment. It was simply, I'll tell you what Boeing discovered. Boeing had their own investigative team, and they had taken a part called the logic coupler to do a bench test, not on one of our missiles, but a part they had back at Boeing in Seattle, and they did a bench test and were able to have an intermittent fault signal injected, a signal injected at a particular voltage for a particular time. It was microseconds or milliseconds, that resulted in this logic coupler flipping off or going offline, and that they consider may have caused the missiles to shut down. But but it was an external signal, not an internal glitch or internal signal. So in order for that to happen, these objects, these UAPs, would have had to send a signal through 60 feet of earth and concrete, penetrate triply shielded cable systems, one at a time, very quickly. That would go to this particular piece of hardware called the logic coupler, and that could have caused the guidance system to go offline intermittently and result in the no-go condition.
Okay. So how did the commanding officer, I believe it was First Lieutenant, is it Frederick
Mywald?
Mywald, thank you. How did he respond to the unfolding of this whole situation when you woke him up?
Well, we were well trained, let's say, to react for any situation such as a missile going down. In other words, getting a no-go indication. We had trained for that, and so we were reacting professionally, I would say. We knew exactly what we had to do, and we had a checklist to do, to go through. And so there was no throwing up of hands or emotional outbursts or anything like that.
There was no panic, but topside.
Well, the topside guards, you have to understand, they were standing there with their weapons drawn and looking at a red, orange, glowing, pulsating object. They didn't know what to expect from that. No one had ever seen anything like that before. They could have been, blown to smithereens by some weapon it had. Who knows? But I can certainly understand why they would have been frightened at looking at something like this.
Absolutely. So so I feel like there was different atmospheres below ground and above ground.
Yes, of course.
And obviously, you're like you said, you have to take an elevator 60 stories down, and
60 feet down.
Yeah, 60 feet down, and you know, you're there till your relief comes. So the next day when you came up and I know you said you didn't get to talk to many of the people, but in the time that is now since passed, have you been able to reconnect with any of them and kind of get a better gauge on what the atmosphere was topside when the event was actually occurring?
No, I've never. I've tried to locate some of them, but I've never been able to make contact with any of them. One of the Air Force techniques of keeping secrets like this is to disperse the witnesses. And I'm sure a lot of these guys were dispersed to different assignments. They were all weapons trained. So since we had Vietnam going on at the time, they were, many of them probably were sent to Vietnam.
Right. And this is I'm so glad you brought that point up, because that's something that we don't, it's not just Malmstrom that is evident of this. It's Ellsworth, an event that would take place some 10 years later. They would do the same thing with Mario Woods. The day after, him and his partner who experienced the UFO, they shipped them off to different bases, to different assignments. And I can imagine that, like you said, this is a way of kind of separating everyone so that no one can get a coherent picture of what actually took place.
All right, and they wanted to stop any rumors of, progressing through the base about what had happened.
Right, and I mean, were there rumors?
Yes.
So, I mean, even though you did sign an NDA, people knew something happened. I mean,
yes, absolutely.
Missiles went into no-go. So it's safe to say that that's something that people would be aware of on a base that houses these kind of things. So, did you get ridiculed or did you get looked at sideways?
No, we, of course, we couldn't talk to anybody about this, and nobody talked to us about it. In fact, I want to make that point too, that even though our crews were briefed every time they went out on alert about the status of missiles, any problems in the field, with technical issues, etc. In the 2 years that I was there after the incident, I never heard of any discussion about any of these two incidents, the Echo or Oscar incident. The reason I mentioned rumors is because it was in one of the official documents that we received. It actually stated rumors of UFO around the time of the Echo flight shutdown were disproven. Now, I don't know how they went about disproving a rumor. I actually wrote to the author of that document. It's called the quarterly report from the wing to SAC headquarters, Strategic Air Command headquarters. We were required to write a quarterly review. And that man, we wrote to him, the author of that report, for this time period, asked him about this statement about rumors of UFOs, and he said he never interviewed anybody that was indicating any rumors of UFOs, and he said there were times when his commanders would change what he had written, and those times were the UFO history of the wing, and those were his words. and some kind of morale problem in the fighter squadron. We had a fighter squadron assigned to Malmstrom at the time. So basically, he had indicated that there had been other UFO incidents at Malmstrom.
And I think there's overwhelming, and if you were finding that out then about previous, then anything that came the evidence that I've come across that happened to and regarding Malmstrom since, it just seems like it's a real hotspot for UFOs or unidentified aerial phenomena, UAPs. What I would ask you a personal question in a way. At first, you said, that initial phone call you took, you I don't want to say you were dismissive, but let's just say that was your left brain or right brain, whichever the one is the one that thinks about logic.
I think that's the left one.
Yeah. Right.
Left.
Because lefties are the only ones in their right mind. Yes, that makes sense. Yes.
Okay.
So it's after that, the second phone call comes in. He's more panicked. Then the missiles, they start shutting off. I know you didn't see the UFO, but before this incident, before March 24th, did you believe UFOs existed?
I had no opinion one way or the other. I had read the reports in the newspaper, like I said, and when we started researching this in earnest, I received copies of many days of reports of lights in the sky, reported by farmers, ordinary citizens, etc. So I really didn't pay much attention to that. I was not interested in the subject per se. So that's about best I can tell you. I was not focused on UFOs.
So it's not like, because a lot of people think that people make up these stories. They're prone to fantasy, that kind of stuff. But it seems like, number one, we can discount that by you having the job that you had. You would need to be of sound mind and so many other things that would be out of the question. So your credibility is among what I would consider the top of the top, in terms of, like I said, in terms of credibility, just in who you are. So, but you also really didn't have an opinion nor care about the UFO issue prior. When did you become a believer?
Well, that evening.
That's what I was hoping. That's what I was hoping.
Again, that evening, the next day, and onward, I looked this guy in the face when I went back upstairs the next day. I was relieved. We were relieved by another crew. I had to really force him to talk to me because they had already been told not to talk to anyone about what they had experienced. I think he never said that, but that was the impression I got. But I looked at this guy in the face, and when you want to get the truth out of somebody, you look them in the eyes, and when people are lying to you or telling the truth. But there was no question that what had happened topside And like I said, I got confirmation about the injury later on in writing. So I was a believer then, no question about it, and very interested, very curious as to just what had occurred. I confirmed that it was not an Air Force exercise with my commander, who was an old World War II pilot, flew B-17s, and I trusted implicitly. So it was difficult for me, I have to say, to keep that secret for 27 years, but I was able to do it, and very relieved and very eager to research this further after I thought the Air Force had declassified my incident. Now, let me go back into that just a little bit. The reason that story was in above top secret is because a man by the name of Ray Fowler.
I know him.
Okay, so he happened to be working for Sylvania at the time on an electrical contract for the Minuteman system, and he had people working for him at MALMSTROM Air Force Base who reported to him that these UFO incidents were involved in the missile shutdowns. And Ray Fowler, in turn, reported to what was ongoing at the time, the Condon investigation.
Yeah, the Condon report.
Yeah, and that was ongoing at that time. It started in '66 and ended in '68. And so I've got all this written up in my recent book. Anyway, I've got all these details written up in books I have written. But
yeah, I have all of so for anyone watching or listening in the future, all of the links for Robert are below in the description. So if you want to read any of his work or follow up with it, I have all of his links below.
Yeah, I've got a YouTube channel under Bob Salas or Giant Head 3. And I've also got a website called spiralgalaxy.org, where you can link to a lot of the recordings. I've got recordings when I spoke with my commander, and also the man who commanded the Echo flight at the time of his incident. And I've got copies of some of the documents I received from the Air Force. So, but anyway, the Air Force was anxious, very anxious about getting a clean bill of health from the Condon investigators so that they could get out of reporting UFO incidents to the public and having to explain to the public
exactly
what this was all about. And so they bent over backwards. In fact, they lied to each other officially, and I've got that documented.
I mean, that report was a travesty. I mean,
right.
it was a joke in itself. It's almost laughable to suggest that I don't. We don't have to go there right now, but we will get there when we talk about Arrow and your submission. But we'll stay here for now. But I want to. So finish your statement.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention that Ray Fowler reported what he knew. He gave them phone numbers and names, etc., to the Condon investigator. The Condon investigator went to MALMSTROM to check on what Fowler had told him.
Mm-hmm.
and got stonewalled. And so the two incidents I'm talking about, Echo and Oscar at MALMSTROM in '67, were never included in any way in the final Condon report. When Fowler saw that published report, he was livid. He was angry enough to risk his job to give an interview to the Christian Science Monitor in, I think it was '73, if I'm not mistaken. At any rate, the Christian Science Monitor published Fowler's statements about the incidents, and that is what resulted in those reports getting into Timothy Good's book, Above Top Secret.
Right.
And that's how it got published. And so when I assumed that the Air Force had declassified it, I was incorrect. The Air Force hadn't declassified it, even though it was published in this book.
But did you do your due diligence? Did you then, go? I don't know when.
My due diligence was to write to the Air Force and, under the Freedom of Information Act, request documents about the incidents that were published in this book.
That's right. Okay, that's right. Fair
And
enough.
the Air Force wrote back, said this was classified. However, they were now going to declassify that incident and send me documents, which they have.
So, okay, if you could send me those documents, I would love them.
Well, there are a lot of documents. You can see many of them as an appendix to my book, Fated Giant, which is available on Amazon.
Yep, linked below.
Okay, yeah, so most of those documents are in there, if not all.
Awesome.
The important ones are in there, yeah.
Okay, so you're now you're a believer in the UFO phenomenon.
Absolutely.
So I wanna make sure that we get to everything tonight or today, but I just want to go back one more time to the night in question, and that is to say, I'm sorry, I just had like a complete fog. So after,
it's called a brain fart.
yes, I'm going through it right now. So
or a senior moment.
Yeah, and it's live. So I got to cut this out of the edited version. So just to be clear, what were the findings of the Air Force Office of Special Investigations? And they instructed you to handle it by obviously signing the NDA, but you're saying that their official position was that this never happened.
No, I walked into my squadron commander's office. I was handed this NDA document to sign by the man who was there from AFOSI. He introduced himself as Captain so-and-so from AFOSI. We wanted to discuss what had happened with them. We thought that that's why they invited us in. But it seemed like they didn't necessarily want to talk about it. So the AFOSI didn't take a position on what had happened. They simply said, we specifically mentioned the fact that you cannot speak about this to anyone ever sign here. And that was about
That was
the
it.
way that's about the way the conversation went. So they never gave me any kind of a bottom line about this incident, other
Did
than
you?
my commander telling me it was not an Air Force exercise.
And okay. Oh my God! Thank you. You unclouded my brain, Robert. So I've talked to so many military witnesses from 2004, the USS Nimitz incident, on to so many other military personnel have been on this show. Now, if there's one thing that I've learned in that time is, especially with the Navy, if they are performing exercises, the number one rule is safety. Now, can you 100% say with certainty this was not a test by some sort of U.S. intelligence or the U.S. government or the U.S. military on its own strategic basis to test your reaction?
Well, let me answer that in a couple of ways. One of the first documents we received was a telegram from Strategic Air Command Headquarters announcing that the Echo flight incident occurred on March 16th. And they admitted that they had no idea why this had happened. It's in the telegram. And the fact that they didn't know what had happened was of grave concern. That's the words on the telegram. Grave concern to this command. If it had been an Air Force exercise, it would have so stated. Again, my commander confirmed that it was not any kind of an Air Force exercise. I mean, we're talking about operational weapons. You mentioned the fact that these could not, once they were disabled, could not be used if given the order, to launch missiles. So it is general policy for our military not to, disable their capabilities of responding to a potential attack by disabling their own, their own weapons. So that's about the best I can say as with regard to why I'm convinced that no, it was not any kind of an exercise. This was a real event. We were not notified before or after that it was some sort of an exercise.
So, again, just to reassure that notion, this was not some sort of clandestine operation that was operated on you guys as a test. And I never thought it was anyway, for all the reason you mentioned, right? Taking your own nuclear missiles offline doesn't seem like a smart move, even if you're testing. It just never added up as a theory, but some have proposed it. And I think it's kind of irrational. Because I mean, I'm sure you know about the incident that happened in Russia, where kind of the opposite happened, where they turned the weapons on. Instead of disabling them, they enabled them and put them into a ready, launch mode.
That's right. Yeah, that's correct.
So if I was you and I was in Russia, or if I was at any of these nuclear bases where anything like this happened, the thought that would cross my mind is they're not showing hostility in the sense of forceful nature. They must be sending a message. Robert, what is that message?
Very simply, you humans are being very foolish by having these weapons that could literally destroy. If you went to World War III and launched them against each other, literally destroy every living thing on this planet. And I don't think anybody would disagree that we've got a multitude of very precious living things on this planet. The least of all, humans. So yeah, I think it was a message to us to abolish nuclear weapons, and that's what I've been promoting in all of my books. And I'm not saying that the U.S. should abolish their weapons unilaterally. It's that
it's a process.
We can do it together as a process. And that process has been initiated in the past. I know that during the Obama administration, we signed a treaty. What was it called? Not SALT. Anyway, we did sign a treaty with Russia to reduce the number of operational weapons and also work towards the abolishment of nuclear weapons.
Yes.
And the United Nations has also made a declaration very similar to that, but now with the conditions with Russia and the U.S., Russia is now no longer following that treaty.
Yeah. And the current geopolitical landscape is honestly, it's terrifying. From Russia and Ukraine down to Israel and Hamas, that war. There's just a lot going on right now, and it just feels very tense, and that we're one miscalculation, one misunderstanding, one bad reaction away from complete annihilation.
Well, it's a very dangerous situation we find ourselves in. Iran, as you know, is threatening to attack Israel and in retaliation. And Iran has the capability of obtaining nuclear weapons very quickly. They have worked on enriching their uranium stockpiles and have a certain amount of weapons grade enriched uranium. Yeah. And now, and of course, Israel is a nuclear power. They have nuclear weapons, although it hasn't been announced officially, but analyses I've seen for a long time state that Israel does have nuclear weapons. And of course, NATO has tactical nuclear weapons where Russia has both tactical and strategic, and they have threatened to use tactical in the war in Ukraine. India and Pakistan are at war with each other over Kashmir, and they are both nuclear powers and could use nukes at any time. So once nukes are used again, we were the last to use them during World War II. But once these so-called tactical or small nukes are used in any kind of a conflict, I think there would be a quick escalation of more countries wanting to obtain nuclear weapons.
Well, don't we have a use them or lose them policy?
I'm sorry, say that again.
It's my understanding that the United States has use them or lose them type of policy in which they would not just launch one weapon, they would launch all of them.
Well, I don't know. I've never read a policy like that. The policy I have read is it's called the Nuclear Posture Review. The last one that was done was I think 2022, but it is the nuclear deterrence, or having a preponderance of nuclear weapons over our enemy, which in this case is Russia, is a baseline or absolute necessity for our policy of nuclear deterrence, and that's what we've established at this point. In other words, that is the basis of our national security.
And
now, first, you may be talking about first use. That's a very fuzzy issue, and that is if the U.S. or Russia has the same kind of policy, thinks that we are about to be attacked with nuclear weapons, then we have the policy that we could launch to preclude such an attack. So that's
like a preemptive launch?
A preemptive launch, yeah. That's first use policy. Now, there's a lot of internal things that have to happen, but these are, like I said, they're kind of fuzzy policies, and which goes back to your point earlier, and that is that we could have a third world war by accident, similar to other wars that we've been engaged in, misunderstandings or some incident that happened accidentally, etc.
It really terrifies me.
So it is a terrifying situation, and that's why we should work hard. We should all work hard towards this abolishment of nuclear weapons, which we can do if we put our minds to it.
I truly do think that one day we will get there. I have hope for this. I have hope for humanity. Now, a lot of people asked me behind the scenes. So there's something known as the hitchhiker effect. Now, I'm not too privy on your experiences, and so this is new territory for me. But have you had any encounters with the phenomena? And I say phenomena because I do think we're dealing with multiple phenomena, not just a singular phenomenon. But have you had any experience with the phenomena after the incident at MALMSTROM?
Yes.
Okay. Would you care to elaborate?
Sure. I have actually written about this in 2 of my books. Very briefly, in 1985, so this was sometime after my incident, but prior to my going public on the MALMSTROM incidents. In 1985, I was living in a particular house in the South Bay area of California here. And one evening, I woke up I was sleeping, of course. In the middle of the night, I woke up and noticed a blue light emanating from our living room. I woke my wife up, and this is my version. She's got a slightly different version, but I woke my wife up and asked her if she saw this blue light coming from our living room, which was strange because we knew we didn't have any blue lights in the house. And she acknowledged seeing this blue light, and I said, well, I'm going to have to get up and investigate. We might have someone in the house. And of course, at that time, we had 2 small children living with us in our home. I started to get up and couldn't because I became paralyzed. And I know people talk about sleep paralysis, but this wasn't that. I recall fighting very hard to retrieve some ability to move my legs, my arms, etc. But I was having a very difficult time. I turned to ask my wife for help, and at this point she was unconscious, which is unusual because we had just agreed that there may be someone had broken into our house. So
that's not something you just fall asleep over.
No.
Oh my God.
Like I said, we had 2 small children also, and
Right.
a couple of other rooms.
And that also tells me that this is not sleep paralysis because you were able to wake her up, and to move, and then all of a sudden you became restrained.
Yes. So I was fighting this paralysis when I saw someone just in the doorway of our bedroom, and it had a hood on. So it had a dark hood. I could not or I don't recall what the face looked like, or I couldn't make it out, or it was too dark. But of course that was frightening. And then I started to relax a little bit, but then I felt or sensed that there were other beings in the room, and these were small beings. I thought they were childlike or children, but at that point I was lifted off the bed, and I was floating towards a closed window that we had in the bedroom, and I thought, well, these are 2 small children. I don't think they'll be able to reach the latch and open the window, but they didn't bother with that. They just took me right through the window. I know that sounds a little ridiculous, but this is what I recall. I've had 4 hypnotic regression sessions to recover these memories, but I went right through that window. There was no broken glass or anything.
I've had so many people on this podcast that have said things, and that's actually a very common theme. Is now my theory on this is, do you think that you could have been abducted astrally? So more or less your body remained in the position it was, but they took your astral form instead, and that's why you're able to pass through walls?
Well, I don't. Again, with my left brain here, I don't understand what astral means.
So
etheric body or light body. These are terms I've heard. I believe we all have souls, etc., but I can't explain how this happened.
Okay. So basically what I'm saying is they abducted your soul.
Okay.
And they took your essence from your body. So you remain you, right? And that's how you're able, but that's just my theory on how some of this abduction might work. If it, but I'm sorry. Continue your amazing
Well, let's just say it was a very strange night.
experience. Yeah.
Yeah. So the next thing I recall, or was able to recall, was being on this, like an operating room table, and being shown a long needle. I actually recall them holding, or one of them holding this long needle. By long, I mean at least over a foot long. But they were holding this with long fingers and put it right in front of my eyes, and communicated to me telepathically that they were going to insert this needle into my groin area, but it wouldn't hurt. But when they started the procedure, it was extremely painful. And I've never experienced that kind of pain in my life until then. So I communicated that to them, and the pain went away almost instantly. And so they continued whatever procedure they were doing. When they were finished, they sat me up on this table, escorted by two, I guess you could call them gray beings, although I don't remember exactly what they looked like. But there were two beings on either side of me, and I was floated over to a molded seating that they had molded inside the craft, and sat there for a little while. I was taken to another cubicle then, and the being there turned me around, poked two fingers down my spine, and then turned me back around. I was escorted out. Again, two beings on either side along a curved hallway, bright light, and I was back in my bed. Now, the next morning, neither my wife nor I recalled that incident the evening before. We didn't talk about it. We didn't say anything. Fast forward another, 25 years at least. We were at a conference in Ireland, and they had an experiencer up there talking about her experience. And she happened to mention a blue light engulfed her in her room. And that set something off. I turned to my wife, who was sitting next to me. I said, "Do you remember a blue light in our bedroom a long time ago?" And she said, "Yes, I do." And that confirmed for me that this incident was real. And that evening, actually, Mary Rodwell happened to be speaking there. I don't know if you've heard of her. She's
I've been trying to get her on the show for some time, but yeah, Mary. So Mary did she do your regression?
She did the first regression. Then I've heard two others. I've had two other regressions by Yvonne Smith, and another one by name escapes me right now, but another individual. So, like I said, I've had 4 regression sessions.
And in all of them, in all the sessions, when you go back to the craft, is there any correlation between what happened at Malmstrom and why you are being taken from your bed.
Well, again, there's probably many things I don't recall if I had any other interactions with the beings at the time. So I can't say for sure there's a direct connection. However, I've been speaking about this and committed to researching my incident for over 30 years. And even though I'm technically in violation of my NDA, I've been speaking about this openly all that time. And so I think I've been, let's say, chosen to talk about this and give the message to the public about the nuclear weapons dangers and risks as a result of the incident I experienced. And there have been many, many, many others.
Yeah.
Similar incidents at nuclear weapons bases and nuclear power plants.
Yeah, it doesn't just for anyone listening, I want to get this I want to cap off what Robert just said. This is not just our nuclear weapons facilities. This is also our nuclear power plants and anything nuclear related. So the ETs or beings, NHI, whatever you want to call it, Robert, there's some clear correlation that we can draw and define. They have a clear vested interest in, do you think, this planet, or is it more humanity?
Well, a good question. I think it's both. I think they're interested in our evolution. I think they want to see us take the action to eliminate our nuclear weapons on our own. I don't think they want to interfere with what we're doing per se. However, they may have helped us along at times. Who knows? A lot of questions.
A lot of questions.
Right.
A lot. And so with the Malmstrom case, it's so easy to default, right, and to correlate the lesson, right? What is the lesson? It is shut down the nuclear weapons, right? Because at any moment we can and we will, right? It's like taking the matches from a baby, but then giving them back and saying, be responsible. You need to do this yourself. But just in case, we are here and we are watching, and no matter how powerful you think you are, yeah, you pale in comparison. But what is the lesson from your abduction?
Well, that was kind of more of a confirmation that they are here. Also, the other lesson is they have objectives relative to us. And one of the objectives appears to be producing hybrids. For what reason is another big question. But many experiencers have talked about the fact that they are producing hybrids between themselves and humans. Another potential lesson is that they were here a long time ago and may have been involved in our evolutionary process for a long, long time.
Right, right. They could be the missing link, if you will.
Possible.
You know, it's I think it. Um, why do you think? So you gave testimony to Arrow. Am I correct?
Yes.
How long was that? How did you deliver? So for anyone who doesn't know, the Arrow office it's set up, and it's the all domain anomaly resolution office. This is basically the Pentagon's way of sufficing the public's demand on UFOs. Lately, I've had Tim Burchett on the show, Danny Sheehan, Steve Bassett. All these people are involved in on that side of the things. But how did you give your testimony?
Yeah, before I get to that, just let me mention that in a recent newsletter from Danny Sheehan, Representative Luna has stated that they want to have another hearing in the September-October timeframe. And
Yes.
So I don't know if you knew that, or your audience might be interested in keeping an eye out for that.
Yes.
I have not received my invitation to be a witness, but I'm hopeful, still hopeful.
Well, so why that, and that's my whole thing is, with this whole Arrow process and, the ability to kind of come away from the NDAs and the security oaths, because I get it. Listen, you come from a time where patriotism was a thing, right? Pride for your nation, pride for your job, prideful to be an American. I think lately we're having an identity crisis, if you will, ultimately. But I think we'll see the other side of this. But back then it was a different era, and I believe that's why you were able to keep your oath for so long, is because you were committed to country, and you're a man of your word. You signed the document, but there's 27 years. I mean, and no progress made, no effort. That had to piss you off in some way. So I can see why you came forward.
Well, I came forward. I'm committed to speaking out. I have been, like I said, for over 30 years. So in February of 2023, I was contacted by Arrow and asked to give a presentation, which I did. I think it was the 15th of February of 2023. I was contacted by Arrow, telephone contact. I gave the presentation. It was over 2 hours, 2 hours plus. I had prepared a PowerPoint presentation, and I had prepared 22 documents supporting the facts of my incident and the Echo incident. And when I was finished, I had one question for them. Would they check with the Air Force and confirm that these incidents did in fact occur and they were UFO incidents? And I got the runaround. They said, well, they tried on other cases, but were not successful, blah, blah, blah. It seems like there's, even though Arrow professes to have cooperation from other agencies, it seems like they're not getting that cooperation. And that may be one of the themes of this next hearing, that Congress wants to see some progress made in getting more information out there. But I did receive letters from Arrow after the fact stating that I had done a great job in my presentation, and that it is now an official historical record, one of their records, which to me says that basically anyone in Congress can get access to all of my evidence, all of this testimony, and the facts as they occurred, as I recall them, and as I have researched. So I thought that was a pretty significant acknowledgement by Arrow. They even commented to me how well I did with this, and even called me a patriot.
Well, you are a patriot. I mean, there's no doubt about that, my friend. But ultimately, I don't know how much Arrow is going to be able to deliver, but that's beside the point. Do you think that we'll ever truly get a disclosure?
Let me just say I'm hopeful.
Yeah.
Because we still have people in Congress that are very motivated to try to get some answers. If they continue to have the courage to invite witnesses to hearings, open hearings, and keep informing the publicly with these hearings from these witnesses, I think that will go a long way to starting to crank open some of these secrets.
Yeah, I really do. I really hope so. And I know Tim Burchett, Anna Paulina Luna, Matt Gaetz, even AOC, all these people. This is the only issue that seems to be bipartisan. So that's a good thing. Let's keep it that way, because that's where it needs to be. This is not a political thing. This concerns every person on the face of the earth.
Right.
So in your experience, what do you think the agenda is? What is the end game?
Well, one thing we haven't talked about is I have written about and convinced that there is let's say a very well organized, well funded, well organized group within government.
Oh, the shadow. Yeah.
Not only our government, but in other countries. I call them the UFO secrecy cabal. That is committed to maintaining these secrets for whatever reasons they may have, including greed, including power. They don't want these secrets released, and they're going to fight tooth and nail to keep them. And that's the kind of thing that, and you hear rumblings from some of these people in Congress, and that there is a strong pushback within DOD and the intelligence community to maintain secrecy. And
right.
So
because
we, the public, deserve the answers. We deserve to know what our government is doing including whether or not they've already concluded our visitors are the enemy and have weaponry to shoot these objects out of the sky. I think we deserve to know that, if that's what they're doing now.
Do you think Roswell happened?
Absolutely, no question about it.
No question.
No question. There have been over 300 witnesses that have come forward. We have affidavits from some of them. These are key witnesses, some of them military, who have admitted to the events of Roswell. I think there's plenty of evidence, circumstantial evidence, of course, that it did happen.
And the reason I bring up Roswell specifically is because it has a connection to nuclear as well, right?
Yeah. Yes.
509. So the Roswell Army Airfield housed that squadron, and it was the only nuclear powered squadron. So
it was a wing, but that's okay.
So, sorry. What is it called?
The 509th Bomber
Wing. Sorry. Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
They're the ones that dropped the
bombs
on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Yes.
Right. So, and that's what I've always said, is to think these guys mistook spaceship for weather balloons, sticks, tape, and tinfoil. I mean, it was a bit outrageous, to say the least.
Right.
And it seems like the government, or like you said, and like Daniel Inouye, in his speech gave, right, that he believes that there's this shadowy government with its own navy, its own army, its own fundraising mechanism, and operates above the law. And it sounds very similar to this UFO cabal. It seems like they want to keep this secret at all costs. And, David Grush has recently come out and talked about how people have been potentially murdered, and I would say definitely murdered to keep this secret.
Yeah, we know from testimonies that many people were threatened with their lives if they spoke about what they knew about Roswell. Whether people were murdered or not is an open question, but there have been some suspicious deaths in this field from time to time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And have you ever been visited? Have you ever been? Has anyone ever tried to persuade you to come say it's all a lie, or to just go away?
No, I can say categorically nobody's come to me directly and tried to influence me to stop talking about this or threatened me in any way. Wait a minute, excuse me. I'm getting notes from my wife here that there have been threats against others, and we have heard this directly from those people, that they have been threatened not to speak out. So those threats are going on. People are frightened. And like I say, this cabal will go to many or all lengths to keep their secrets.
Right. So and I find it weird that these special access programs, the unacknowledged ones that nobody knows of, right? That not even these black projects that have to do with or some of the ones that have leaked at least what they were working on, they all things like anti-gravity. I mean, we know anti-gravity was a huge thing in, I think it was the 50s. It was in all the magazines and then it just disappeared. And some have speculated that the code was or anti-gravity was cracked. Could it be that it was cracked because of reverse engineered craft? Do you believe that we are in possession of craft of non-human origin?
Yes, absolutely. In fact, there's a new book that I just found out about this summer, written by Roberto Pinotti, an Italian investigator. And the book is about the Magenta crash that happened in Magenta, Italy in 1933, where a craft was recovered. James Fox, who I think you're going to have on as a guest.
Yes, in September, yes.
Will confirm that there was a crash of a craft near Varginha, Brazil, because he did a excellent documentary on that. And then we have Roswell, of course. So there's plenty of evidence that craft has crashed and that we've had access to those craft. And no doubt some sort of back engineering has been attempted. Who knows what kind of technical secrets we've derived from looking at that.
Right.
But
Right.
and also, which we know that some of our aerospace companies have been involved. We know this from some of the discussions that have taken place recently in the Congress.
Yeah, it's absolutely mind-boggling, actually. And I mean, in your expert, so I had Danny Sheehan on, and he talked about the evidence for a galactic federation, that there's multiple species, interdimensional, extraterrestrial, there's multiple species visiting this planet. Have you done any research? Have you looked into that? What is your belief on such a thing?
Well, there are people I trust who have looked into it and have had experience. Different types of beings. So yeah, I certainly think if one, let's say, civilization, extraterrestrial civilization, has visited, the chances are that many have visited our world and are working peacefully in concert with each other. I mean, that's our objective here on Earth, right? To work peacefully with other countries. We're not doing very good at it right now, but that's why we have to continue our evolution. But if you think about civilizations out there that have existed for many, more years than ours have, maybe they have found a way of getting along with each other and in cooperation with each other. So it makes logical sense that there would be some sort of federation like that. Hello? Are we still there?
Yeah. Oh, sorry. I was muted. So Marco Leal, he put a comment up, and you had mentioned James Fox and Moment of Contact. Marco was actually the lead investigator for that film, and he's a friend of the show. And he said, "Great live." So Marco's a great UFO researcher. He is without him, James Fox would not have been able to make Moment of Contact. Such a great documentary. So
I agree.
Yeah. So when you were abducted, you said they spoke to you telepathically, and that you were able to speak back telepathically. This is something that we hear often in cases of not only abduction but close encounters, kind of in general. Do you think that consciousness? It seems that we are the pinnacle of biological evolution, at least in terms of our planet. We have thumbs we are able to manipulate the earth around us to our will. So it's logical to say that our next steps of evolution would be in the brain, and that would be conscious evolution. So do you think that consciousness is key to some of this phenomena?
Well, in the sense that, well, I like to talk in terms of values. You might think of a civilization that, in our civilization, a human civilization, we live by a set of values. In other words, fairness, honesty, those kinds of things are part of our value system. And when I think of raising our level of consciousness, I think about being more faithful or true to our value systems. And I think that's what ET is watching, waiting, hoping that we will do. And that is the simple value of, doing unto others as we would have others do unto us. Right?
Right.
That we would live by that, not just utter the words, but actually honor and live by that. Take care of each other better. Because if they allow us to leave our planet with our nuclear weapons, and by the way, we are doing that now, well, at least leaving our planet, we're planning to establish bases on the moon, for example, and in the future, bases on Mars, and not just the U.S., but China, Russia, other countries.
Do you think that the ETs would let us bring nuclear weapons to space? Because the evidence suggests not.
I hope not. But in order to stop that or keep that from doing ourselves, they want us to take these actions ourselves and not to, let's say, interfere with what we're doing.
Right.
We would have to have mutual agreements, that we could all live by, that we will not indeed take any nuclear weapons to these bases off Earth. So that's what I'm talking when I say raising our level of consciousness. It's not just a question of uttering our value system, but of applying it in fact.
That makes sense. And but I mean, there other people have come forward and said, you know, that some of our tests, when we tried to detonate a nuclear weapon in space, that it was thwarted by a UFO came in, and this was just a dummy. It wasn't even an actual like actual warhead. This UFO came in and basically zapped it, you know, and then it tumbled out of the sky. So it seems that that they wouldn't, if they are that concerned, that maybe they're restricting us to Earth only. You will not be able to leave Earth with nuclear weapons.
Well, again, like I said, they may have the capability of doing that. They may have the capability of stopping us from taking our weapons off Earth. However, I am also, I think, my speculation that they want us to, let's say, have the will and intent and to do that ourselves, to abolish all nuclear weapons on the moon, on Mars, now, and not take those weapons out there, and on our own volition, not because we are forced or told not to do that.
Well, that would make sense in a okay, I'm gonna let them. Yeah, I guess it is. It's
otherwise we're would be subject to the will of some external, like you say, a federation of beings, of extraterrestrial beings, and we would be under their direction per se, and nobody wants that. No nation or group of nations wants to be directed by others to do something or not.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. And I think if this, you know, the ET races, when and if they do make contact, I think they want it to be a hospitable thing and something that we grow into, you know.
Let's say a mutual respect.
Right. Right, exactly. Let us forge our own path. But I mean, the latter end of that, or the worst side of that would be, what if we don't get it right? And, you know, would that lead to a catastrophic disclosure like Danny Sheehan talks about, where they're forced to reveal their hand?
Oh, well, yeah, who can say what might happen in the future? I think a lot of this is speculation right now.
Yeah.
But like I say, the optimal situation would be that we decide among ourselves, all nations of the earth, optimally will abolish nuclear weapons, and optimally will come up with firm agreements not to transport our weaponry off Earth.
Well, it's almost like a butterfly. I mean, a caterpillar, right? It spins its cocoon, and it needs to break out of that cocoon upon its evolution. It needs to struggle. If you help it, it will die. We may be the caterpillar evolving into the butterfly in this case, where they can't step in. They can't help us, because if they do, it will hurt us in the long run. And that could be, a strong implication of a no, almost like an Eternals vibe, where they have to watch from a distance, and that's why maybe only certain people get peaks here and there.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense, Tyler. I agree with your analogy with the butterfly.
Yeah, we could be the butterfly, or the caterpillar.
Well, we haven't turned into butterflies yet. We're still
we're still spinning the cocoon.
Yeah. We're trying to figure things out.
Yeah, AI kind of, that whole thing is throwing me for a loop. But couple final things, because the MALMSTROM Air Force Base incident, the UFO or the abduction, any other phenomena, have you ever been involved in any other phenomena? Has anything else happened to you that you'd like to share?
I think it would take another hour or so to go over some of the other visitations, let's say, we've had and experiences. There have been others in our lives, both myself and my wife. But again, it would be too involved to go into here.
But you're saying there are more experiences.
Well, we have had other experiences, yes.
That's really, really. So obviously we'll have to have you back on. I love talking to you, Robert. You're such a honorable man, and you are a patriot. You've done all you can. You've given your testimony to the right people. You've given the evidence to the people that are supposed to make the changes necessary. Do you have hope that change is coming?
Oh, absolutely. I have hope that change is coming in disclosure and with the human race, that we will continue to evolve, provided we don't blow each other up.
Yeah. I agree. Is there anything? Is there anything that you're working on right now that people can look forward to? I have a couple, by the way. Stick around after the show ends, after the outro music. I just want to talk to you for a second. But is there anything you're working on right now that people can look forward to? Or, can you tell us about other projects that you've done?
I have written 3 books. I've spoken in 17 countries. I've spoken to the governments of Brazil and Mexico. The only thing I hope for and would love to do is speak at a hearing, public hearing in Congress. And so I've got my feelers out for that.
I'm going to try to help. I'll reach out.
That'd be great.
I'll reach out. I have Tim's phone number, so I will reach out.
So that's all I'm working on right now. I'm not working on another book at this point. although I don't, I'm not saying I won't write another book, but
I think there is. I think that your story needs to be told. In for a new audience, a younger audience. So I think there's opportunity here, or opportunity there. But I'll have all your links in the description, like I said, below, and anyone tuning in can buy any of the books, and you can watch Robert. Robert, you've given your testimony in so many films, documentaries, shows that there's so much out there that people can feed on. So I really just want to thank you for coming on the show tonight. And how can people? You have a Twitter, right?
Yeah, I'm Kept Tycho on Twitter.
And then on Facebook, it's just Robert Salas.
Right.
Right.
And on YouTube, I've got a YouTube channel under Bob Salas or Giant Head 3.
Okay. And you post videos there frequently?
There are videos on my YouTube channel. Like I said, I gave a presentation. I've given many presentations at the National Press Club. Some of those are on there.
Yeah. Yeah, I love all that stuff. So I'll put that link in there below as well. Robert, thank you so much. I hope this is the first of many conversations. You're a true patriot, and the stuff that you've been through. It's good to see that you still have your wits and your sense of humor, your patriotism, and your wife. She's such a lovely person. Congratulations on your guys' anniversary. And I just want to say again, thank you for your service to this country.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you about my wife. Phenomenal human being, and we will have been married 55 years this month.
Yeah. What an amazing, and any veterans that are struggling out there, who have had a sighting, what would you recommend?
Well, number one, to make sure you document your memories of it as best you can in a journal, and try to get corroborating witnesses to document various facts, and take seriously the possibility of coming forward publicly.
We need more. We need more.
We need as many witnesses as we can get. We will have new whistleblower protections in the new legislation coming up. So keep your hopes up that you can publicly talk about this as best you can.
Yeah. So for everyone out there in the podcast sphere, I don't know why, but it let me start streaming to Twitter at like the last 20 minutes only. So that was very Elon. I'm pointing my finger at you because I pay money for Twitter. So that was very that threw a wrench. But to anyone out there listening, make sure to like, share, subscribe. And if you're listening on podcast platforms in the future, make sure you follow the show and leave a star rating. It helps us garner a wider audience so we keep bringing you the best content possible. We want to thank Robert Salas for his service to our country as a retired Air Force commander. especially with the job he had, like we said. And for everyone else, our members, you know what it is. We'll see you guys next time.
Thank you.
Sorry, you said thank you?
Thank you very much, Tyler. I appreciate being here. Thank you.
Thank you, Tyler.
Thank you.